What if everything you've been taught about loneliness is wrong? Not slightly wrong, completely, fundamentally, dangerously wrong. Think about it. From the moment you were born, you were handed a belief so deeply embedded you've never once questioned it. That being alone is something to fix. So you filled the silence with noise, with people. With your phone at 2 a.m. scrolling through the lives of strangers just to avoid sitting alone with your own thoughts. And somehow, despite all that connection, you still feel empty. Here's what nobody has the courage to tell you. That emptiness isn't from being alone too much. It's from never learning how to be alone at all. The most dangerous thing a person can do in the modern world is sit in complete silence, with no distraction, no validation, no noise, and just think. Dangerous because what you find there will change you permanently. The Stoics knew this. They built entire philosophies around it. And the ones who mastered it, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, didn't just survive the chaos of their world. They became unmovable inside it. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how solitude works as a weapon. Not a retreat, not isolation, a weapon for building the kind of inner strength that no circumstance, no person, no failure can ever take from you. But I have to warn you, some of what you're about to hear is going to make you uncomfortable. Good, that discomfort is exactly where we need to start. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you sat completely alone? No phone, no music, no TV, no podcast. And just let yourself think. If you're struggling to remember, that's not an accident. We live in a world that has engineered every possible escape from that moment. Every notification, every autoplay, every infinite scroll exists for one purpose. To make sure you never have to sit alone with yourself long enough to actually meet yourself. Because here's what the noise is protecting you from. You. The real you. Not the version you perform at work. Not the version you post online. Not the version you've constructed over years of trying to be what other people needed you to be. The one underneath all of that. And I'll be honest with you, that meeting is not always comfortable. When I first started deliberately sitting in silence, no distractions, just me and my thoughts, what came up wasn't peace. It was everything I had been running from. Doubts I hadn't examined, fears I had buried under busyness, questions about my life I didn't have answers to yet. My first instinct was to reach for my phone. I didn't. And that decision changed something in me permanently. Here's what the Stoics understood that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. You cannot build a strong self on an unknown foundation. And most people have never actually examined their own foundation. They've inherited beliefs, absorbed opinions, collected identities from everyone around them, and called it a personality. But it isn't. It's a costume. Solitude is the moment the costume comes off. And for most people that is terrifying, because underneath it they're not sure there's anything there. But here's what I discovered, and what every person who is committed to this practice discovers. There is something there. Something solid. Something that was always there. Waiting beneath the noise, beneath the performance, beneath the endless seeking of approval. A self that doesn't need to be validated to exist. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in human history. He had every distraction available to a man of his position. Wealth, power, entertainment, war, politics. And yet every single morning, before the world could reach him, he sat alone and wrote. not for an audience, not for history, for himself. He wrote things like, "Confine yourself to the present and look within. Within is the fountain of good." He wasn't writing philosophy. He was doing what most people never do. He was checking in with himself, deliberately, daily, without distraction. And that practice, that simple, uncomfortable, countercultural practice, is what gave him the ability to navigate betrayal, war, plague, and personal loss without losing himself. Not because his life was easy, because he knew himself deeply enough that nothing external could rewrite him. That's what's available to you in solitude. Not escape, not avoidance. The opposite. Total confrontation with who you actually are, what you actually believe, and what you actually want from this one life you've been given. Most people never get there, not because they're incapable, because they're too afraid to turn off the noise long enough to find out. Here's your practice, and start small if you need to. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone, before the world has a chance to fill your head with its agenda, give yourself 10 minutes. Sit somewhere quiet, no input, no output, just you. Notice what comes up. Don't judge it. Don't fix it. Just watch it. You're meeting yourself for possibly the first time. And what you find there, however uncomfortable, is the raw material of everything you're capable of becoming. Because you can't build something real on a foundation you've never looked at. And the moment you look, really look, everything starts to change. Next, I'm going to show you why the world is specifically designed to keep you from doing exactly what I just described, and who benefits when you never figure this out. Here's something that should make you angry. The feeling that you're not enough, that you need more followers, more validation, more people around you to feel complete. That feeling was engineered deliberately by people who profit from it. Every major platform you use was designed by teams of behavioral psychologists whose sole job was to make you feel slightly inadequate, just enough to keep coming back. The like button wasn't invented to connect people. It was invented to create a feedback loop of dependency. You post, you wait, you check. You feel relief or rejection based on a number. And you call that connection. It isn't. It's a slot machine. And you're pulling the lever dozens of times a day. Seneca wrote nearly 2,000 years before the internet existed, retire into yourself as much as you can. Mix with people who are likely to improve you. He understood something that we've forgotten entirely. Not all company is good company, and constant company is almost never good company. When you are permanently plugged in, permanently reacting to other people's content, other people's opinions, other people's highlight reels, you slowly stop having original thoughts. You start borrowing your beliefs from whoever showed up in your feed that morning. I noticed this in myself during a period when I was most active on social media. I had opinions about everything, strong ones. But when I sat down in silence and asked myself, where did this opinion actually come from? I couldn't answer. It hadn't come from my experience, my reflection, my values. It had come from an algorithm that decided what I should think about that day. That realization was one of the most unsettling moments of my life. Because if your thoughts aren't yours, who are you? And this is exactly what the system counts on. A person who doesn't know who they are will keep searching for identity in external places. They'll keep consuming, keep scrolling, keep buying things that promise to fill the gap. The gap that solitude would close for free in 10 minutes of silence. Here's the practice. For the next 7 days, choose 1 hour each day with no input. No podcasts framed as self-improvement. No videos, no music with lyrics. Just silence or ambient sound. Notice what your mind reaches for. Notice the discomfort. Notice how quickly you want to fill the space. That reaching, that desperation for input, is the clearest sign of how dependent you've become on external noise to feel okay. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The world will keep offering you distractions. Louder ones, more personalized ones, more addictive ones. But you'll know what they are now. And knowing what something is the first step to no longer being controlled by it. Next, I want to show you what happens inside the minds of the people who figured this out first. The ones who changed history not despite their solitude, but because of it. I want you to think about the greatest minds in human history. Newton, Einstein, Darwin, Nikola Tesla, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. What do they all have in common? Not genius, not luck, not privilege. Every single one of them had an unusual relationship with solitude. Newton developed his theory of gravity during a forced quarantine when Cambridge University shut down due to plague. Completely isolated. No colleagues to consult. No validation to seek. Just his mind. And the silence around it. In 18 months of solitude, he produced work that changed how humanity understands the universe. That wasn't a coincidence. Here's what most people miss about these figures. They didn't stumble into solitude reluctantly. They sought it deliberately, protected it aggressively, treated it as non-negotiable. Tesla said he did his best thinking alone, that the presence of others actually diluted the clarity of his ideas. Darwin took a daily solitary walk he called his thinking path. The same route every day, alone, in silence. Not because they were antisocial. Because they understood something most people never figure out. Your mind has two modes: perception and creation. When you're consuming other people's words, opinions, content, you're in reception mode. You can learn in that mode, but you cannot create, you cannot innovate, you cannot discover anything genuinely new. Creation only happens in the gaps, in the silence between inputs. Epictetus put it simply: no man is free who is not master of himself. You cannot master something you never spend time alone with. The people who shaped history weren't waiting for someone to hand them clarity. They went and found it in the one place it has always existed and always will, inside themselves, in the quiet. I think about this every time someone tells me they're not creative, that they don't have good ideas, that they don't know what they really want from life. My first question is always the same. When did you last give your mind genuine silence to work in? Because your mind, left alone, without input, without pressure, without the noise of other people's expectations, is an extraordinary problem-solving machine. It makes connections. It surfaces answers. It generates ideas that have never existed before. But only when you give it space to do that. Here's your practice. Once this week, take a problem you've been struggling with, something real, something that matters to you, and instead of Googling it, instead of asking someone else, instead of consuming content about it, sit with it, alone, in silence, for 20 minutes. Write down whatever comes up without filtering it. Don't judge the thoughts. Just let the mind work. You will surprise yourself every time. Because the answers you've been searching for everywhere else, in other people's opinions, in endless research, and constant advice seeking. Most of them were already inside you, waiting for the noise to stop long enough to be heard. Next, we go somewhere most people never want to go. The darkest part of solitude, the part that feels like it might break you. And why that part is actually where everything changes. I need to be honest with you about something. Everything I've told you so far, the clarity, the creativity, the self-discovery, that's real, but it's not the whole picture. Because when you first sit in genuine solitude, really sit in it without escape, it isn't peaceful, it's terrifying. Not because solitude is dangerous, but because you are finally still enough to hear everything you've been drowning out. The shame you buried under achievement, the grief you postponed indefinitely, the anger you told yourself wasn't worth feeling, the fundamental question you've been too afraid to ask. Am I actually living the life I want, or just the life I fell into? All of it surfaces at once, without warning. And most people, at exactly this moment, reach for their phone. I did. The first time the silence got loud enough to hurt, I found every possible reason to leave it. Suddenly I had emails to answer, podcasts I hadn't listened to, people I needed to check in with, anything to avoid what was coming up. But here's what I eventually learned, and what the Stoics understood with brutal clarity. The thing you are running from is not your enemy, it is your teacher, and it will keep showing up in your relationships, in your decisions, in your fears, in your patterns, until you turn around and face it. Carl Jung called these buried parts of ourselves the shadow, not because they are evil, but because they live in the darkness we refuse to illuminate. And shadows, by definition, only have power in the dark. The moment you shine light on them, the moment you sit with your fear instead of fleeing it, your shame instead of suppressing it, your grief instead of postponing it, something unexpected happens. They shrink. Not immediately, not completely, but they lose the enormous distorted power they had when you were running. Because you realize the thing you feared facing was never as insurmountable as the running made it feel. I sat with my fear of failure for the first time in real silence about 3 years ago, not analyzing it, not trying to fix it, just letting it be there, fully, without resistance. It was one of the most uncomfortable 20 minutes of my life. And when it passed, and it did pass, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, something deeper than happiness. Relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for a decade and finally exhaled. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he is not, but rejoices for those which he has." But before you can rejoice in what you have to stop pretending that what you've lost doesn't hurt. Solitude creates the space for that honesty. And here's what changes when you do this work consistently. You stop being afraid of your own inner world. And a person who isn't afraid of their own mind cannot be easily controlled by the world outside it. You stop making decisions from fear, from avoidance, from the desperate need to feel okay right now. You start making decisions from something solid, something that was always there. Underneath the running, underneath the noise, underneath the performance. Your actual self, unfiltered, unafraid. Here's your practice. The next time a difficult emotion rises, resistance, fear, shame, grief, don't immediately act on it or suppress it. Give it 5 minutes. Sit with it. Name it out loud if you have to. I am feeling fear right now. I am not going to run from it. 5 minutes, that's all. You will discover that emotions, even the darkest ones, are not permanent states. They are waves, and waves, no matter how powerful, always break. You don't have to defeat your darkness. You just have to stop letting it chase you. Because the moment you turn and face it, you realize it was never chasing you at all. It was trying to show you something. Next, the part nobody expects. What happens to your relationships with other people when you finally stop needing them to save you from yourself? Here's a paradox that took me years to understand. The people who need others the least are the ones others want to be around the most. Think about the most magnetic person you've ever met. Not the loudest, not the most entertaining. The one who had something quiet and unshakable about them. The one whose presence made you feel strangely calm. I guarantee you, that person had a deep relationship with their own solitude. Here's why. When you haven't done the inner work, when you're still running from yourself, you bring that desperation into every relationship you have. You need people to validate you, to reassure you, to fill the silence inside you that you haven't learned to sit with yet. When people feel that need, even when you never say a word about it, it pushes them away. Or worse, it attracts people who exploit it. But something fundamentally shifts when you've spent real time alone, when you've met yourself honestly and decided, I am enough. Not perfect, not finished, but enough. You stop entering relationships from scarcity. You start entering them from abundance. You stop tolerating connections that drain you, because you no longer need them badly enough to accept the damage they cause. You stop performing, stop shrinking, stop contorting yourself into whatever shape you think someone else needs you to be. And in that authenticity, in that quiet refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are, you become something rare, someone real. In a world full of people performing for each other, a person who has stopped performing is magnetic. Not because they're trying to attract anyone, because they have stopped trying. That stillness, that groundedness, is what people are actually starving for. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." When you found that retreat within yourself, you carry it with you everywhere, into every conversation, every room, every relationship. People feel it. They don't always know what it is, but they feel it. I noticed this shift in my own life about 6 months into a serious solitude practice. My relationships didn't just improve, they completely restructured. People I had kept around out of habit, out of fear of being alone, naturally fell away. Not dramatically, just quietly, because I no longer needed what they were offering. And new people appeared, people who matched where I actually was, not where I had been pretending to be. The relationships formed from that place were different in a way I still find difficult to describe. Lighter, more honest, built on genuine resonance rather than mutual need. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. The opinion of others lies beyond your control, always has, always will. The moment you truly internalize that, not just intellectually, but in your bones, you stop building your identity on something that was never yours to control in the first place." And that freedom, that genuine, unperformed freedom, is the most attractive thing a human being can possess. Not confidence in the performative sense, not charisma, not status. Just someone who is completely, quietly, unapologetically themselves. Here's your practice this week. In every social interaction you have, notice the moments when you're performing, when you're saying what you think someone wants to hear, when you're shrinking or inflating yourself to fit the room. Just notice. Don't judge. Just see it clearly. Because awareness is always the first move. You cannot change a pattern you haven't named, and once you name it, once you see exactly where you're still seeking approval, you can begin to choose differently. One honest interaction at a time, one moment of choosing your truth over their comfort at a time. That's how the shift happens. Not overnight, but irreversibly. Next, we bring everything together. How to use solitude not as something that happens to you, but as a deliberate, strategic practice that compounds over time into something most people never build. Unshakable inner strength. Everything we've covered so far, the self-discovery, the inner darkness, the magnetic presence, none of it happens by accident. It requires a decision made daily against the current of everything modern life is pushing you toward. The decision to be deliberately, intentionally, strategically alone. Not lonely. There's a difference that most people never grasp. Loneliness is solitude, experienced as punishment, something that happens to you, something you endure while waiting for rescue. Solitude as a practice is something entirely different. It's solitude chosen, protected, used with intention. One drains you, the other builds you. And the difference between them isn't the silence, it's what you bring to the silence. Think of it like physical training. A person who stumbles randomly into a gym once a month and does whatever feels comfortable, they don't get stronger, they just get tired. But a person who shows up consistently with a plan, who pushes deliberately into discomfort, that person compounds. Every session builds on the last. The gains are invisible day to day, but undeniable month to month. Solitude works exactly the same way. One session of forced silence doesn't transform you, but 30 days of deliberate daily practice, 10 minutes in the morning, a weekly hour of deep reflection, a monthly day of complete disconnection, that accumulates into something most people never build. A self that is genuinely, structurally, unshakable. The Stoics didn't treat this as optional. Marcus Aurelius, managing an empire of 60 million people, facing wars on multiple fronts, dealing with political betrayal and personal tragedy, still found time every single morning to sit alone and write. Not because he had extra time, because he understood that without that practice, everything else would eventually collapse. The inner work wasn't separate from his outer responsibilities. It was the foundation of them. And that's the reframe I want to leave you with. Solitude is not time away from your life. It is the practice that makes your life worth living. It is where your decisions get clearer, where your values get sharper, where the noise of other people's expectations gets quiet enough that you can finally hear your own voice. And your own voice, once you find it, once you trust it, it's the most reliable guide you will ever have. Here's the practice, the complete system, 3 levels, daily, 10 minutes every morning before any input. No phone, no content, just you and silence. Use it to ask one question. Who do I want to be today? Weekly, 1 hour of complete disconnection. Walk alone, sit alone, write in a journal. No agenda except honest reflection. Ask, What did I learn about myself this week that I didn't know last week? Monthly, 1 full day. No social media, no unnecessary conversation. A day to audit your life with clear eyes. Ask, is the direction I'm moving still aligned with who I actually am? These aren't luxuries, they are maintenance. The same way you maintain your body, your finances, your relationships. You must maintain your relationship with yourself, or everything built on top of it becomes unstable. Because here's the truth that ties every part of this together. You will face loss, failure, betrayal, seasons of your life that feel like they're dismantling everything you built. Every person does. That is not a possibility. It is a certainty. The only variable is who you are when those moments arrive. Are you someone whose entire sense of self depends on external circumstances staying stable? Someone who collapses when the approval disappears, when the relationship ends, when the plan falls apart? Or are you someone who has spent enough time alone, enough time knowing themselves, trusting themselves, being with themselves, that no external storm can reach the foundation? That foundation is built in solitude, brick by brick, day by day, in the 10 minutes before the world wakes up and starts demanding things from you. It is the most important work you will ever do, and almost nobody does it. Epictetus, born a slave, died one of the most free men who ever lived, said this: make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power, always, completely, without exception, is your inner world, your thoughts, your responses, your relationship with yourself. Solitude is how you tend that world, how you keep it clear, how you keep it strong. And a person with a strong inner world cannot be broken by the outer one. Not because life stops being hard, because they stop needing it to be easy. That is the power of solitude, not escape, not isolation, not withdrawal, a forge. The place where, in the fire of your own honest company, you are shaped into someone who can face anything. The noise will always be there. The distractions will always multiply. The world will always have 1,000 reasons for you to stay plugged in, stay reactive, stay dependent. But now you know what the silence holds. And that knowledge, once it's yours, changes everything. Start tonight. 10 minutes. No phone, just you. Meet yourself. Finally. Fully. Everything you've been searching for out there has been waiting in there all along.